The whisper arrives like a ghost. It doesn't shout. It materializes in your mind, delivered by a trusted friend, a broker with a conspiratorial tone, or someone who claims to know someone on the inside. It's a fragment of a secret, a stock that is guaranteed to move. And with that whisper, the seed of ruin is planted, not with malice, but with the intoxicating promise of easy money. You feel a jolt, a sense of being chosen. You have been given an edge, a key to a locked door that separates the struggling crowd from the effortlessly wealthy. You believe you are being handed a gift, but what you are truly being handed is a blindfold and a shovel. This is the siren song of inside information. It is the most seductive and destructive force a speculator will ever face. Why? Because it appeals to the deepest flaws in human nature, greed and laziness. The market is a vast, complex machine. To understand it requires immense effort, study, and the painful accumulation of experience. It demands that you sit for hours, days, weeks, studying the behavior of prices, the character of market movements, the subtle interplay of volume and momentum. It is hard, solitary work. The tip, however, offers to absolve you of all this. It promises a shortcut through the wilderness. It tells you that you don't need to do the work because someone else has already done it for you. It replaces diligent analysis with simple blind faith. The psychological trap is far more profound than simple greed. It's about ego. When you receive a tip, you feel special. You are no longer one of the uninformed masses, staring blankly at the flickering quotes on a screen. You are an initiate, a member of an exclusive circle. This feeling is a powerful narcotic. It clouds judgment and silences the small, rational voice in your head that might otherwise ask the critical questions. Why am I being told this? If the information is so valuable, why is it being shared with me for free? What does the person giving me this information stand to gain? But the ego, puffed up with its newfound importance, dismisses these questions as unnecessary cynicism. It wants to believe. Believing is easy and feels good. Doubting is hard work and feels like you are rejecting a golden opportunity. The human mind craves certainty in an environment of pure probability, which is what the market is. The tip provides a false narrative, a story with a clear beginning, middle, and a guaranteed happy ending where you make a fortune. It turns the complex, impersonal ocean of the market into a simple treasure map where X marks the spot. You stop thinking like a speculator, weighing probabilities and managing risk, and you start thinking like a gambler, placing a single, unhedged bet on a fixed outcome. This is the moment you cease to be a student of the market and become another piece of cannon fodder for the great generals who actually control the campaign. They are the ones who create these stories, who bait the traps with whispers of mergers, new inventions, or massive government contracts. They know that human nature is the one constant in the market, and they play upon it with the skill of a master puppeteer. You are not their partner. You are their exit liquidity. I remember a time years ago when the air was thick with talk of railroads. The country was expanding and steel rails were the arteries of commerce. A particular stock, let's call it the Atlantic and Imperial Rail, had been sleeping for months. It was a solid, unspectacular company, trading in a narrow range with little public interest. Then the whispers began. They started in the back rooms of brokerage houses and spread to the finest restaurants where men of means gathered. The story was perfect in its simplicity. Atlantic and Imperial had secretly secured the rights to a new revolutionary steam turbine engine that would cut fuel costs in half and make their locomotives the most powerful in the world. The rumor was that a major industrialist, a titan of the era, was quietly accumulating a massive position before the public announcement. The source of the tip was always impeccable. It came from a friend of a director or a clerk in the patent office who saw the filings. The story was so compelling, so logical, that it seemed foolish to doubt it. And the tape at first seemed to agree. The stock began to stir. It would rise a point or two on a sudden burst of volume, then settle back down. This was the first phase of the manipulation. The operators behind the scheme were testing the waters, creating small flurries of activity to attract attention. They were chumming the water for the sharks. Soon the financial papers picked up on the unusual activity in Atlantic and Imperial. They didn't state the rumor as fact, of course. They were more subtle. They would write columns speculating on the renewed interest in the railroad sector and mention Atlantic and Imperial as a company rumored to be on the verge of a major development. This gave the whisper an air of legitimacy. Now it wasn't just a backroom tip. It was being discussed by the so-called experts. The public, seeing the stock creeping up day by day, began to feel the familiar pang of being left behind. The trap was being set. The buying started to swell. What was once a trickle became a steady stream, and then a torrent. Each new high was seen not as a point of potential danger, but as confirmation that the story was true. "It's going up," the uninformed trader would say. "The rumor must be real." They bought with the fervor of converts, mortgaging their homes and cleaning out their savings accounts to pour money into Atlantic and Imperial. They saw only the rising price. They did not see the character of the trading. They could not see what I saw on the tape. I watched and I did nothing. The price was indeed rising, but the volume was explosive, frenzied. This was not the quiet, deliberate accumulation of a great industrialist. This was the clamor of the public rushing to a fire. And on the other side of that public buying, I could feel the steady, persistent pressure of distribution. For every 1,000 shares the public bought in a panic, some large, unseen entity was patiently feeding them 1,000 shares. They were not dumping the stock in a way that would break the price. No, they were masters of their craft. They sold into the strength. They supported the stock on small dips, encouraging the buyers, making them feel safe, only to unload even more of their holdings on the next wave of buying. They were milking the rumor for every last dollar. The stock reached its zenith on a day of pure pandemonium. It gapped up at the open, trading more shares in the first hour than it typically did in a month. Everyone who had the tip felt like a genius. They were calculating their fortunes, planning what they would do with the windfall. They were euphoric. And that is precisely when the trap was sprung. An official announcement came over the wires, not from the company itself, but from the industrialist who was supposedly buying the stock. His office issued a curt, formal denial. He had no interest in Atlantic and Imperial, had not bought a single share, and considered the rumors to be unfounded and irresponsible. The floor fell out. The moment the denial hit the tape, the market for Atlantic and Imperial vanished. All the bids were pulled. The buyers from the morning, the ones who felt like geniuses, were now trapped. They tried to sell, but there was no one to sell to. The large operators who had been so happy to sell to them on the way up were gone. The price plunged. It didn't just drift down, it collapsed in a terrifying cascade of panic selling. Men who were rich on paper at 10 in the morning were facing financial ruin by noon. The beautiful story, the secret tip, the guaranteed win, it all evaporated into the cold, hard reality of the tape. The stock didn't just go back to where it started. It went far lower, weighed down by the thousands of trapped buyers who would be forced to liquidate for weeks and months to come. The creators of the rumor had accomplished their mission. They had distributed their entire line of stock at inflated prices to a public that had been hypnotized by a ghost story. They didn't need a revolutionary engine. They had a much more powerful tool, a well-told lie. Jesse Livermore, or Larry Livingston as he was known in print, consistently stressed that Wall Street extracts a heavy cost of instruction for every lesson learned the hard way. Fortunately, the core principles he developed to survive these expensive market penalties were captured for posterity by Edwin Lefebvre in the 1923 masterpiece, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. It stands as the finest possible literary training ground, allowing you to absorb decades of painful operational experience without ever having to risk $1 of your own capital. To ensure this timeless wisdom translates accurately to the modern computerized arena, we advise seeking out the Max Davidson Annotated edition. Davidson's careful commentary is indispensable for bridging the gap between Livermore's era and ours. A link to this essential edition is provided in the description below. Learning from the costly lessons of the past is the foundation of a speculator's education. It builds the psychological fortitude necessary to resist the temptation of stories like the one of Atlantic and Imperial Rail. I give you the discipline and the mindset. I teach you the why behind market moves, the timeless currents of human greed and fear that I observed on the tape. But for the precise mechanics, exactly where, how, and when to execute a trade based on the market's own actions, not on rumors, you need a more structured methodology. You need to learn how to identify the fingerprints of the large operators, to see their campaigns of accumulation and distribution as they unfold. For this, you need the structure of Richard Wyckoff. He codified these market operations into a practical, repeatable science. I have left the link to his channel in the description below. Use it to complete your arsenal. My wisdom on human nature combined with his technical framework is the surest path to navigating these treacherous waters. Today, the delivery mechanism for these false rumors has changed, but the underlying trap is identical. The whisper doesn't come from a man in a smoky boardroom. It comes from an anonymous avatar in a private chat group, a leaked internal memo on a social media platform, or a charismatic personality on a financial news network who hints at a scoop. The speed is faster, the reach is wider, but the intent is the same: to create a stampede of public buying that a large operator can sell into. They no longer need to print rumors in the paper. They can inject them directly into the nervous system of the market through the internet, creating a flash mob of eager buyers in minutes. So, what is the correct course of action when a tip falls into your lap? You must have a fixed, unchangeable protocol, a mental algorithm that you run every single time, without exception. First, your default assumption must be that the information is false. You must begin from a position of extreme skepticism. Do not treat the tip as a piece of valuable intelligence. Treat it as a piece of deliberate misinformation designed to manipulate you. Second, ask yourself the most important question. Cui bono? Who benefits? The person giving you the tip is not your friend. They are not a philanthropist. They have a motive. In 99 cases out of 100, their motive is to get you to buy a stock that they are trying to sell. They need your demand to offload their supply. Third, and this is the most critical step, you turn off the story and turn on your screen. You subordinate the narrative to the evidence. You go to the chart. You study the market action. The tip is, at its absolute best, a suggestion to begin your own analysis. It is never, under any circumstances, a signal to place an order. What does the chart tell you? Does the stock's behavior align with the story? If the rumor is of a secret buyout, you should see signs of quiet, methodical accumulation by informed interests. This would look like a stock trading in a narrow range on decreasing volume with upside tests that show a lack of selling pressure. What you will most often see, however, is the opposite. You will see a stock that has already run up significantly. You will see massive climactic volume spikes. You will see a chart that screams distribution, not accumulation. The market action is telling you that the smart money got in weeks or months ago, and now they are orchestrating this rumor campaign to get out. The tip did not arrive at your door at the beginning of the move. It arrived at the end, precisely when they needed you to show up and take the shares off their hands at the highest possible price. The chart does not lie. The storytellers do. You must learn to listen to the chart and ignore the story. The price and volume are the only truth. Now let's consider a different scenario. Let's say your discipline failed you. The story was too good, the temptation too strong. You acted on the tip. You bought the stock. And now the position is going against you. The stock is dropping. This is one of the most difficult psychological positions a trader can be in. Your ego is now fully committed. To sell now would be to admit three painful things: that you were wrong, that you were gullible, and that the person who gave you the tip either deceived you or was a fool themselves. Your mind will fight desperately to avoid this conclusion. The source of the tip will likely reappear, offering reassurance. "Don't worry," they'll say. "This is just a shakeout to get rid of the weak hands before the real move." They're trying to scare you out of your position. Just hold on, the news is coming any day now. This is poison. It is the voice of hope, and hope has no place in the business of speculation. Hope is the emotion that turns a small, manageable loss into a catastrophic one. Hope is what keeps you anchored to a sinking ship, believing it will magically start to float again. There is only one correct action. You must obey your stops. You must cut the loss. The moment the market invalidates the premise of your trade, you must exit. No questions, no hesitation. Your first loss is always your best loss. The market is telling you, with the cold, hard language of price, that the story was wrong. You must listen to the market, not to the voice in your head that is clinging to the original beautiful narrative. Arguing with the tape is the quickest path to financial ruin. It is an argument you will never win. You take the small loss, you swallow your pride, and you live to trade another day. The capital you preserve is your ammunition for the next valid opportunity. The lesson you learn, if you are wise, is worth far more than the small amount of money you lost. The market is not a game of secrets and shortcuts. It is a game of probabilities, discipline, and emotional control. The greatest edge you can ever have is not a piece of inside information, but a piece of inside knowledge about yourself. Your own weaknesses, your own tendencies towards greed and hope, your own susceptibility to a good story. True market mastery comes from conquering yourself, not from uncovering some secret plot. The flow of information, the tide of prices, the waves of buying and selling. This is the ocean you must learn to navigate. Whispers of treasure on a distant island are just distractions, mirages designed to lure you onto the rocks. Your only reliable tools are your own analysis of the currents, the winds, and the tides as they appear right now, printed on the tape. The market itself provides all the information you will ever need if you only have the patience and the discipline to learn its language. Forget the tips. Forget the stories. The truth is in the action of the market. That is the only guide you can ever truly trust. Study the tape. Stay disciplined.